All right, everyone. Hello, I am Andrea. I am the events catalyst for the Immersive series and your co-host for today's gathering. As I mentioned, I'm tuning in from Bucharest, Romania. I want to warmly welcome you to our gathering and swiftly introduce our guest for today. Peter Williamson is a professional golfer turned entrepreneur who uses his knowledge of games design and philanthropy to catalyze change in communities. He's the co-founder of Barometer XP, which empowers leaders and practitioners with the science of play. He also runs a nonprofit called Game Genius that builds bespoke play solutions for local organizations to support their efforts in various ways. Welcome, Peter, and over to you.
So, thank you. Well, good morning, good evening, wherever you're calling in from. I'm really always excited to play with new faces. And as the intro shared, I come from a background of play and sports and games, and I really love seeing the world through that lens. And so today, it would be probably malpractice of me not to play games with you. So we're going to play a lot. I want this to be interactive. I want this to hopefully, kind of give you some ideas or just kind of pique your curiosity around how you might be able to use play more effectively in the work that you do. Before we jump in, I would love if you're willing to type in the chat a game that you really enjoy or a favorite game that you've had since childhood. A game of some form that you enjoy. Type in the chat. Kerplunk. Balderdash, the Diablo franchise, Mario, Wingspan. Got some bird people in the group. Monopoly, Fallout, Zelda. All right, so we got a mix. There's some tabletop games. There's some video games in there. Nice, excellent. I find that games are a really fun kind of cross section of our interests, the things that we enjoy. But as we play today, what I'll call out is that games have particular components to them that we resonate with. And when you go into a group like a team, you'll find, as you see on this list, people don't have the same games and play activities that they enjoy, or maybe there are their favorites. And so I often call out at the top that play can be really intimidating to bring in for a facilitator because when you walk in, it's very likely that the game you're playing, some people are going to not like. And so, how do you kind of get over that barrier of half the group is going to be really happy, half the group is not happy? What do you do to make that a meaningful experience for people? And so, as we play today, I'll call out some ideas for ways that you can draw some people in, but also making sure that you're playing a diverse type of game when you're coming together with a group so that different people are able to lean in and lean out during those games. So, the next kind of thing that I want people to do is just type your name in the chat. Literally type your name and hit enter, and that's going to create an order for us. We're going to play a game here to set up this session. So just type your name in the chat. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Everyone should have the chat pulled up. All right. So just by raise of hands, who has played improv games before? So some hands, some medium hands, some thumbs ups. Okay, I see some. All right. So improv is a really popular sort of genre of play. It's very effective in the workplace because it does kind of get you to think on your feet. It has a lot of active listening to it. It will mirror a lot of times how you try to show up to a meeting. And so we're going to play an activity just to kind of get warmed up here today. This activity is called Fortunately, Unfortunately. And how the game works is that I am going to start a story. I'm going to say a sentence. And then in the order that we have in the chat, so Lori, you're going to be next, then Dylan, then Anna, then Neil, then Joanna, we're going to move down our chat. And each person is going to say a sentence that builds off the previous sentence. So if I said the dog went to the store, Lori would then continue the story of the dog going to the store. Unfortunately, there is a twist. So we are going to say a sentence, and then the next person is going to say, fortunately, something happened. And the next person is going to say, unfortunately, something happened. And we're going to alternate fortunately and unfortunately as we tell this story. And we're going to kind of weave it and see where it goes. We'll go one round, we'll see where we're at, and we might play a second round. But raise your hands. Anybody have questions before we get going? We're going to jump into this game and we're going to see how it goes because you never really know where stories go when you play these types of games. All right. Everyone understand the premise? Okay, I see nods. This is good. All right, so Lori, I'm going to give you the start of the story. Today, there was a big, big festival.
And fortunately, there were lots of people there.
And unfortunately, there was also a lot of mud.
But fortunately, everyone was wearing great mud clothes.
Unfortunately, those clothes all seemed to disappear in the wind.
Fortunately, it was a rainbow in the sky, and everyone was just enjoying watching that.
Unfortunately, the weather took a turn for the worse.
Mayan, we might have jumped over you if you want to skip back in. Go ahead.
Sorry, am I doing fortunately or unfortunately now?
Fortunately.
Great. Sorry, just skip me that. Thank you.
Okay.
Eliza, sorry,
You
can
there?
you say the last one again?
Unfortunately, the weather took a turn for the worst.
Fortunately, since everyone was wearing mud clothes that had disappeared in the wind, they found them in the rainbow.
Unfortunately, it was starting to rain again.
Liz, if you want to take over.
Yeah. Fortunately, three dogs came out to play in the mud.
Andrea?
Fortunately, the dogs, jumped on everyone, and with the mud.
Naya? You can jump to Jordan.
Okay, which one are we on? Unfortunately or unfortunately?
Unfortunately. Oh, sorry. Taya typed in the chat. I said, unfortunately, I am allergic to dogs. And so now you unfortunately.
Okay. Fortunately, there were reps from different dog allergy medicines outside tabling to get people to try the services.
Excellent. I think that was everyone who typed their name in the chat. So we'll pause there. So we went from big festival to now we're giving out dog medications. A story that takes winding twists and turns, but in none of us are music fans. So in a game of unfortunately, it forces you to kind of like listen in to what happened before. But I would love just reflections, popcorn style. Anyone notice kind of what was happening through the story? How did you feel as you were playing? Just share a little bit about that experience.
I thought it was difficult to think of an unfortunate statement because I'm naturally a more optimistic person. So I'm like, yeah, let's play with the dogs. Like, let's go to a festival. So I found thinking of something that's fortunate quite hard.
Yep, I love that. Anyone else? I see in the chat the groupthink was interesting. I felt curious where the story was going to go. I needed to listen very carefully. Yes. Difficult to track the order, fortunately, unfortunately. I think that's true too. Yeah. This activity is what I find really interesting is people show up very differently to it, and oftentimes we'll run 2 rounds of it and make sure that everyone gets a chance to be a fortunately and an unfortunately. And so, Elisa, to your point, thinking about kind of how you show up, if you are someone who is an optimistic person and you're forced to kind of take the story in the wrong direction, some people get nervous about that, and being able to reflect and kind of share, hey, I really want us to work together towards something that's good. Or maybe there's someone who's oftentimes very constructive in their comments in a meeting, and giving them a fortunately role kind of gets them into how do you collaborate more with the group, even though it's not the direction you wanted to go originally. And so trying to nudge people in those directions, but it's not too heavy of a game. And so hopefully people are willing to kind of get into it, maybe get a little silly with their answers, and the story takes a strange turn. The more you play improv games, the more you'll see that sort of warming up of a group, because they understand the structure, they understand what they're trying to do. It's very quick to get them in, and that can be really helpful for play, especially for groups that don't play often, is to do things that are very simple so that you can get them into playing early instead of explaining 15 minutes of rules. You know, a lot of the games that people shared, a little bit more complicated to explain. So it might take time for people to get into the energy. Any other thoughts? Thanks for the comments in the chat.
Sometimes I feel like with improv, you want to try and make sure that you're always giving something that's an open that allows the story to continue on rather than trying to close it down. So you're trying to sort of think about how you'd structure it in a way where you're trying to like not make that happen. And that involves a bit more thinking, like a classic open versus closed question.
Yep. Yep. And sometimes we'll layer on challenges, like that are, okay, every statement you make is closed. And you can feel that sense of like trying to continue a story that's like kind of been resolved. And you're like, what do I do now? And you either take it in a really random direction just because you want to, or you like try to force it down a smaller and smaller hole. Or the reverse, if groups are not great at asking the opening question. How do you get people to just kind of leave things really wide open? So layering on challenges can be a nice sort of second or third round of a same game. Cool. So what I want to do now is I want to sort of bake this in some of the science. So a lot of the work that I'm doing day to day is thinking about why does a specific game or activity work for a team or a workplace or a setting. And the way that we've thought about that is through a handful of models, a lot of experience, but just seeing how you can break a game down into its individual components. And then as a facilitator or a trainer, know how you can build those things back up. So if anybody's ever played with Legos, it's kind of like taking something that's been built with Legos, disassembling them, and then rebuilding them up into something different, right? If you can do that with a game, it makes you a really powerful improver as a facilitator with games, because you can take it in directions that the game may not have said in the rules you could do. But as a facilitator, that would be a really effective way to get a team to react in real time. So I'm going to share my screen. Be a couple of slides, just kind of sharing some models. I welcome questions. I want this to be as useful as possible for you all. So if you have questions, please type them in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, however you feel comfortable, and I'll take them real time. There'll also be time at the end here to ask questions if you've got something more specific. But I'm going to share my screen. Everyone see this okay? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Excellent. Okay, so first off, a lot of the work that we're doing is sort of at the intersection of three different fields. Talent and org development, really big field. Learning and development, kind of the community that we're in, right? Thinking about how can you get the best out of the people. Fun team experiences. There are a lot of these in the world, right? You can do everything from going out and playing with people or going to an event. There's a wide range of fun team experiences. And then employee wellness, thinking about mental health. It's a little bit newer of a space, but thinking about kind of how do you get people to show up and be their best selves. For us, we find play is a really great way to create the intersection of these three things because it does stuff that each one of these bubbles can't do individually. A lot of fun team experiences are fun, but they don't necessarily pack the weight of learning unless you are intentional about it. And talent and org development oftentimes isn't fun unless you have packed some kind of playful element into it. And employee wellness is often thinking about the individual, not the team as a whole. And so when we come together as a group and we play, we have the ability to kind of bring everything into the center of this diagram. And we find really good experiences are both fun, impactful, and help people think about their lives in a bigger way. So that's oftentimes what we find is the kind of holy grail of our sessions is hitting the middle of that diagram. One thing that we found really resonates with people is when you go in and you play, playing with people with no purpose often leaves people with a really sour taste in their mouth. So when you come into a play session and you know that you're going to play, why are you there? Is it to have fun and create shared experiences? Is it to build trust and awareness and like skills? Is it to develop the team as a whole and think about how can we work better together? There are different layers of ways that you might be able to think about play, and we often use an iceberg metaphor to share some of that model. So for us, we find a lot of this play in our space is at the top of this model. It's the things that you can see out in the open. It's we're having fun. We're having that shared experience. We're strengthening relationships. Super important in the workplace. There's a lot of articles out there that talk about how relationships drive success. But it doesn't necessarily mean people are going to trust each other more. It doesn't necessarily mean that you understand your colleague better because of it. That comes with reflection, asking the right questions, coming through with some kind of debrief that can be helpful. That's really what gets play amplified in a learning environment. And so a lot of the times what we focus on is underneath the surface of the water. So in this sort of team building and team development. The difference between team building, which is that reflective piece, and team development is you're taking those reflections and you're driving them into the workplace as an action. So you're creating behavior change because you've created a next step. So oftentimes we'll work with groups to take the insights that they have, those reflections that they were great, and turn them into what to do next. And so play can help with all three steps here, but it's really important to call out which one you're focusing on, because if people come in with different expectations, oftentimes play falls flat. And then this is a lot on a chart, but one of the things that we did when we first got started is we asked hundreds of L&D people, leaders of companies, what does pressure sound like in the workplace? So just as a background, if you're in science or you took science classes in school, barometers are measures of pressure in the environment. So you know when it's going to rain because of the barometric pressure. For us, we're measuring pressure in teams. And so a lot of the times we're trying to figure out what does it sound like when a team is not feeling like they have a good strategy? What does it sound like when people don't feel accountable? What does it sound like when people are not communicating well or they don't have the right tools to do their job? Those are the things that we tried to listen and find kind of what people were saying, what we heard, what people were kind of avoiding in conversation. And we put that into an assessment. And we sent that assessment out to a bunch of people and we tested it and we saw a lot of big trends emerge as we were doing this. So we've refined this tool as a way to think about how do people feel, think, and act in the workplace, and why, what, and how are they doing the work? And if you put those things together, you end up with different types of ways to define pressure or tension in a workplace. And for us as game people, that's really helpful at picking a game that mirrors that pressure point. So if teams are having trouble communicating, well, I have 1,000 games that I could recommend for communication, right? Anything from charades to fortunately, unfortunately. There are a lot of games that get you thinking about how to communicate with others. And so for us, our goal is to try to map games or activities to these pressure points so that when you as a facilitator or practitioner in the space are thinking about what game should I use, you have a good instinct for, well, this is why. And for a lot of times that can make the difference between a team saying, yes, I'm willing to try that, and no, I am not. I'm going to pause there and see if anybody has questions. Jump off of my share screen here. Any of that resonate with people? Has anybody tried to bring play into their organization? I see some nods. Anna, Shida, can I prompt you for any reflections on what happened?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really interested here is that this definitely sounds like very, more strategic. I've brought in mostly like game-based training for like more in the moment, right? You're playing, but maybe, yeah, not to the level of, okay, we're actually looking at how play at a larger scale can solve quite some of these bigger challenges that we hear teams complaining about or struggling with. So, yeah, that's kind of my interest is how to take it from really tactical, yeah, just like you said, tip of the iceberg fun event to like, no, this is actually something driving toward your strategic challenges.
And leaders are like, oh, we're going to go play again. Like, great, we're going to waste another 2 hours of our day. Yeah, that's something we want to do. No, it's when you show there's intentionality behind it, people are more willing to invest. Then it's kind of your style of facilitation and kind of playfulness that comes out that oftentimes gets people wanting to come back for more. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
Hi.
Brought in play?
Hi. We do play like when we do our team builders at the beginning. I work in the government. So I don't know if there's like, it doesn't feel like people want to play like, willingly. Well, they kind of do, but it's just like kind of surface level. It's like more quizzes and like trivia stuff. But having moments like in these workshops and being at other conferences and whatnot, I want to bring the learning there. And sometimes it feels it's like, how do I like infuse it in there without having to be so heady and like conferencey in a way? And so I'm trying to find that balance. And I like what you said about the debrief questions. That's always helpful to kind of like bring it back. So yeah, I find like the fun is there, but then also going a little deeper is a little challenging.
No, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I feel like what's surprising about what we've learned over the years is when you play, let's say you have an hour session, you're probably playing for like 20 minutes and debriefing for 40. It's amazing how much comes out of a game, but how often a facilitator will be like, we're going to play a game. You play the game, the session ends, and everyone's like, great, and now we go home. And like, there's no learning that happened other than like what people experience in the moment and we're willing to self reflect on, but like really making time for people to share kind of like, oh, this was great, I saw this in my colleague, oh, I hated this is why. Knowing that and getting some feedback can be good for next time. Joanna, thanks for sharing in the chat. Yeah, the egg drop challenge or scavenger hunts in the city. Yeah, creating things that are, if you think about an egg drop challenge and a scavenger hunt are both very kinetic, right? Egg drops it's a coordination exercise, right? So it's very action heavy. And there is some communication in it. There is some kind of thinking in moments, right? And you don't want the egg to hit the ground and break, right? So there are some emotional components to it, but it's very much a kinetic game. And scavenger hunts, you're moving around the city, also kinetic. I think when people think about team building, that is really effective. It gets people moving around, right? You're doing some kind of action. You're chasing people around. And so when you think about games, it oftentimes in the workplace, you're just trying to get them out of their own, get them out of their seats, get them moving around. That can be really effective. Where we see games fall flatter is when you play a game that's more kind of emotionally charged, right? Not saying that it's negatively emotion charged, right? But there are a lot of emotions in the game, and then those emotions are not talked about, right? People kind of sit in them, and then they walk away and don't really know how people experience the exercise. So thinking about how you can blend the sort of emotional, the cognitive, and the behavioral pieces of games, that can be really helpful, and just like having a wider range of experiences for folks. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Okay, so back into play here. I'm gonna do a little role play exercise for us. So I'm gonna share my screen for just a second again. Imagine we are all a team. So we're here, we're 15 people or so. We're all a part of a team now. Congratulations. It's my new favorite team. But we have some communication things happening, right? We got a lot of coordination issues that are happening a little too frequently. Some people who've just joined the team, they don't really understand the systems or the structures of the team. Where do I go and ask people questions? This seems really complicated. I'm not quite sure how to engage this client. Whatever that might feel like to you, coordination, communication is becoming an issue. And so we've been brought in to play a game, and that game is going to be very communication focused. So we're going to try to build some awareness, both self-awareness, but also kind of seeing each other in the space. And we're going to play a fairly simple activity. And before we do, I would love to just learn a little bit more about this group. So in the chat, I would love you to type a number between 1 and 5 that represents kind of how you show up to new projects. So if you are more detail oriented, I want you to put a lower number, so something like a 1 or a 2. If you are a big picture thinker, big visionary, I want you to put 4 or 5. And if you're in the middle, 3 is fine too. All right, I see some numbers. No one's willing to take the venture out into the poll. For those of you who have put 2s, share a little bit about what makes you think you are on that part of the continuum.
I suppose I'm always eager to learn what the big picture is, but then my brain automatically goes to okay, how are we going to make that happen? Like, what are those specific details to make that happen? And then I kind of play devil's advocate and always look for why it would fail or why it would go wrong and what we can do to overcome those.
To myself, I feel like I'm kind of a data person, so I would like to, when I have new projects or new problems, I would like to gather the facts and the data first, and so I would like to go deep into detail. But as long I can gather the data and I think I can formulate some decisions from it, I can also be a big picture thinker also. But yes, I am more data kind of guy.
Thank you. And then on the other side of the continuum, what do you make? Why do you feel like you are a 4 or higher?
I would say for myself, I always need to understand like why we're doing something, what it impacts, and like what is the point. If I don't feel bought into like the bigger context, then I don't feel that interested in understanding like how to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? What about the folks in the middle? I see some 3s. Knowing the end in mind. Thanks. So I often hear when folks are kind of thinking about this question, it could be very project specific, right? It could be, I haven't worked with folks before. I want to make sure that I am responsive to everyone. So I'm more in the middle because I need to figure out, like, do I need to be more detail oriented or do I need to be more big picture oriented when I come to this project? I'm not sure yet. And so oftentimes people put themselves in the middle. Because we don't have any people on the polls, that'll make this next kind of activity that we do sort of interesting to see how people show up. Oftentimes on a team, you will find people who are deep in the weeds, right? That are dealing with data, they're doing the designs, they're doing the work on the ground. And then you've got the folks that are in leadership or people who are thinking about the big vision. And they certainly can think about details, but they are much more oriented in the ways of kind of giving people direction and letting them run with it. And so how this might change in a group is worth noting, right? If you have a lot of people that are 4s and 5s on a team and you have maybe 1 or 2 1s and 2s, how do those 1s and 2s show up, right? How do they feel like they're a part of the experience, or do they feel like they're a bit left out? And on the flip side, do people take the roles in play that they are typically taking in the workplace? So if they're able to mirror that experience, that can be really helpful to know as a facilitator. So using questions like this to set up a game can be a really simple way to, one, get people talking, sharing their experience, sharing how they want to show up, and then going into the game where they don't have to necessarily think about this piece as well, right? Like they can just kind of jump into the game and say, oh, okay, I am more detail oriented. This is how I'd like to show up to this game. And this is how I'm going to be. And how people are responding to me is about that conversation that we've just had. So using this can be really helpful as a setup. What I would love everyone to do is I would love everyone to get a piece of paper and a pencil if you have one available. If you do not, we will do an imagination game. We will draw with your mind. All right, I see some thumbs ups. So as people are getting those materials, I need a brave volunteer who is willing to be our visionary for this next game. You will be explaining a vision to people. Do I have any volunteers? Ryan? Okay. I'm excited. I am going to send you a vision. You may make sense of this vision however you would like, but you should have it in a private chat to you now. Just let me know if you've got that. That open up okay for you? All right. So there's this big vision that's happening, and we're trying to align on this vision. And so, Mayan, you're going to explain what you have in front of you to the best of your ability to try to get people to draw as close as they can this vision. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to explain this vision and for people to draw it. And at the end of the 2 minutes, we're going to see how we did. All right. Make sense? Any questions before we get going? Fairly simple activity. But looks may be deceiving.
Am I free to describe it in any way I see fit?
You are free to describe it in any way that you see fit. No rules of words that you can't say. Everything is on the table. You just can't like share your screen and share the visual.
Okay.
Drawers, any questions? All right, we got ready drawers. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put 2 minutes on the screen so that you can see the timer. And when you start talking, I will start the timer.
Okay. So the vision is an animal, and it's an animal that represents wisdom. It's a very schematic portrayal of this animal, a bird more accurately. And you would have the head part of that bird. You would clearly see the face, the eyes, the beak, maybe a bit of the neck as well is visible to you. There are not so many details to this drawing. It's kind of a simple one, and it's looking straight at you. Yeah. So I wouldn't say you need to put too many details into this animal, and not to make it too realistic. It can be a little bit abstract, but not too much because it's still recognizable. And imagine as if this animal is also peering from behind a curtain or a screen at you. So it's a little bit tilted in that way. And I think that's all the information I could actually give.
Any questions from the drawers, if you have any? You nailed the description. No one has questions. Everyone's got the perfect vision. Okay, so I'll stop the timer. Before I share the visual and what it actually looks like, what for the drawers, what was helpful? What did mine share that was helpful for you in drawing this vision?
I think the first thing that really stuck out to me was when my aunt said it's associated with wisdom. So that instantly gave me some ideas, like narrowed it down from an animal where I was like, okay, I'm gonna need more detail than that. And as soon as they said, oh, it associates with wisdom, I had a couple, like two animals in mind already. So thank you, Mayan.
And further to that, I felt the same, but also having the description of that it was a bird, that narrowed it down even further for me.
What was helpful?
I guess getting the understanding of where the bird was looking, so I was able to actually draw it. Like I couldn't start straight away. I needed more detail before I could start drawing. And actually, I went ahead and drew the surroundings that I thought would suit this particular bird. And then when I found out it was peering through a curtain, I was like, well, yeah, I had, not thought about that, but
You're committed. You're committed to the scene.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I was also relieved to know that it didn't have to be detailed. So I think the clue that it was, very uh, like a schematic drawing or diagram of this bird, I was like, oh, okay, great, because I really can't draw. I'm really crap at Pictionary. So this kind of already put me at ease.
Thank you for sharing. Man, what if you were to be able to do this again, what would you have changed about your approach?
I think in relation to the scale you gave us before of starting with big picture or going into the details, I started very high level and then kind of tried to give more small details immediately, and there was maybe no in between. And then when I realized that, I thought, oh wait, there's so much more I could actually say about this. And then I dialed myself back to the middle a little bit. And then I talked about the positioning and how it's kind of like peeking or looking behind something. At that point, I imagine everybody's already finished their drawings. So either they would have to go back and redo their work, or just give up because there's no more time, because we had like 30 seconds left.
I love that. That is amazing reflection. So there's so much to unpack with that, right? But this is one thing that you can do with play that puts one person in a spotlight, right? So very brave to be our visionary, right? And take kind of that vulnerability on, but to be able to share that in real time is hopefully helpful, right? When you play these types of games, because you can sit there and say, well, where at work am I explaining something that no one else can see? I've been working on it for days, and I'm now presenting a draft paper or a new design or an event idea, and I'm trying to explain it to somebody. And that thing that you said about the kind of transition from big picture to small picture that's a really rich reflection. And then kind of putting that in front of the team and saying, well, would that be helpful? So for the folks who are drawing, did you feel like that there was a moment in the middle where you could have used kind of transitionary, how do I get from big picture to details? Was there something that you were looking for that you didn't feel like you got by the end of your drawing?
I guess you go.
Yeah, I think actually, on what you said about like how afterwards you said, oh, and there's a curtain on the side. Yeah, I think that would have been good detail to have in that middle, or more just like the positioning of this and kind of bridging indeed from like when you started with like it's a schematic about wisdom. I was actually like, what are you talking about? And I just like sat and waited. And then you got into the tacticals, but indeed maybe something there of like the position of this feature. Oh, there's a curtain, and then there's this a little more of like the spatial kind of exploration before the very big details. Because I still wasn't writing when you said, it's facing you, like waiting for like, okay, is that the kind of lay of the land, and then it's like, oh, by the way, here's the lay of the land. Like, okay, well, my bird sucks now, but obviously just a fun activity. But
I think it would have been maybe helpful to get an example of the types of birds that you're thinking of, because I think when someone says, oh, it's a bird that represents wisdom, to be honest, I was kind of like, I was thinking of what birds represent wisdom and wondering if others had the same ideas. Like, for example, I thought of owl. I have no idea if that's considered a wise bird or what others were thinking. So it would be helpful to get like, oh, it looks like an owl or like a sparrow or something like that, to like, yeah, to make it more like, I guess, obvious the direction that we're going in.
Neil, did you have something?
Pretty much exactly what Anna was sort of saying that as well. When you first use it, it sort of defines wisdom. I literally was like, and at that point, it becomes like almost like creative arts, doesn't it? You go, well, we could take that in a million different ways if we try to recreate it. And then as it got into more of the details, but again, similar to Anna, I wrote down the words. I didn't draw anything. I then waited to then make sure I could get a sense of it, and then go it. And then when felt like I had enough, then I could do it, and actually draw it from there. So.
Awesome. Yeah, what I find is often happens during a game is that you'll say something in communication that you're like, everyone's going to understand this, right? And then you realize like, not everyone understood this. Okay, that's the baseline of where this kind of can go off the rails. And so just by highlighting, at no fault of anybody, but more saying like, these are things that happen often when we talk to people. We use idioms and sayings that we think are very common, but are not. The descriptions, they're words that we think are very obvious, but are not. And to try to bring that conversation to everyone in the room and allowing there to be questions, which obviously I did not in this activity. But if people were to start surfacing, well, it would be really helpful to ask my own questions as we were kind of drawing our own individual thing. It would have taken a lot longer, right? Things would have been really, really long, but you might have gotten to a closer picture. So thank you all for sharing. I would like to show you this picture now because we need to see it. So I am going to present what this picture is. So behind the curtain is our bird, our bird of wisdom. Would love if you're willing to share your drawings, what it looked like. Oh, yeah, nice. Look at those. Look at that. Oh, I like these. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Uh, so that is a game or an activity. Oh, there you go. Another one. Yep. There's an activity called Visionary. Um, and I find that it is kind of a blend of Pictionary, someone said it. There are various drawing games out there where you're trying to explain what's going on. All those types of fast iterative drawing games are fabulous communication exercises because you're taking it from one medium, words, and you're turning it into a visual, which is something that can cross any language, right? And so thinking about how you can create those conversions, go back and forth between drawings and words and drawings can be really effective ways to think about communication. Um, so just kind of looking at the time, I'll share oftentimes when you play a game like Visionary, you do multiple rounds, ways to kind of build on top of what you've done in the past. And when we're in a virtual setting like this, we all did a drawing where you were drawing on your own, right? You had your own pen and paper. You didn't have to think about anybody else. You didn't have to collaborate. But when you're on a team, you do. You're working on the same project. And so one thing that we'll do is we'll start with something very simple that individuals can do. They can feel the full autonomy of being able to draw their own picture. And then we'll integrate well, now you're sharing a canvas and we're doing a whiteboard drawing online. So I'll pass over this today, but we can play if people have extra time afterwards. We can play this extra round. But we would use something like Zoom Annotate, which is a tool within the share feature of Zoom, or we'd use a whiteboard like Miro or something like that, where people can kind of go into the same space and draw. And we'd have one canvas. The visionary would be telling you to draw an image, but everyone is working on the same picture. And so now there's this extra chaotic piece of coordination where like some people don't know if it's their time to draw. And it adds a whole other layer of communication where Mayan, you instead of having to just explain the bird, you would have been like, Anna, you need to draw the face. And Dylan, you need to draw the wings. And oh, by the way, there's a background and the background's this. And so in order to figure out how do you get a bunch of people to engage in a drawing, it's a totally different skill set. And so for us, when we play games, we're often trying to layer on a part of a game that can really get to a learning objective. So start really simple, add something that's very, very tangible and very clear for people to go, oh, this is why our project last week didn't work, or oh, this is what I could do to be better in a meeting next week. And so something that's really, really tactical. Any questions before I move on? Obviously, the reflection is kind of the next piece. Where if you're reflecting around those experiences, you can kind of drive those learning insights deeper. The thing I'll finish with is kind of where this all gets to the very granular level. So we just played a game called Visionary. If you were to think about the different skills that you needed to show to be good at that game, what would you say the skills were? Professional skills. Feel free to type in the chat, come off mute. Any things pop into your mind? Communication. Yes. Take the easy one. Yep. Active listening, delegation, asking useful questions, listening. Yep. I love it. I'll add a few more. Creativity. Nice. Yep. Adaptability, decision making, feedback, goal setting, growth mindset, initiative, leadership. There are a lot in this game, and it's one of the reasons why time management, right? Strategy development, advocacy. There are lots of these terms that you kind of hear, right? But when you experience them, they become a lot heavier of a term. And so if I were a facilitator and I were thinking about this challenge, which was communication, right, on our team play, I would be trying to get people to reflect around how communication went. But say the team was really having trouble getting things done on deadlines. I'm going to make that timer the main piece of this game because time management is going to be the thing that I want to level up or level down for this group. And so when you have a game that has so many different, what we call game dynamics, the skills that you need to show to be good at it, you can use that as a lever, right? You can think, do I want to switch this, dial this up to 11, right? Make it really, really big for the experience? Or do I want to kind of put that in the background and really focus on how are people resourceful, right? If I didn't tell you to go get a pen and paper to start the game and we just played, how would you have done it? Would you have thought about it? Right? Would you have gone and like gotten a bunch of things and like scrap built a model? How do you think about an activity? And so, as again, a facilitator, you can kind of break the game down and think, how do I want to build it back up for my learning outcome? On the other side of kind of game design, there are game mechanics. And the game mechanics are like what we have for terms as like, this is the thing you did in the game. So it might be like, we cooperated, or we had to deduce something. Like we had to figure out like this was an owl out of the description. We had to sketch something, the skill of sketching, right? We might have taken turns in being the describer, the visionary. We might have taken on a role of drawing a particular part of the canvas. All of those are mechanics, and mechanics are the ways that game designers bring in those experiences and those skills into the game. And so when you can connect what is that thing that you're doing with the skill that you need to be good at it, now you've got sort of the building blocks of a game mechanics, game dynamics. And we've worked pretty hard over the last few years to try to like consolidate the list of those terms down to something kind of manageable. There are thousands of them. So how do you create a sort of quick resource that can get you thinking about, well, what are the mechanics that make people feel things? What are the mechanics that make people think about things? What are the mechanics that make people act in real time, right? And if you're able to kind of connect the dots, this is where we have those models that I shared earlier, where there's a matrix and there are different types of pressure points. Well, now I have game mechanics and dynamics that I can align to those different pressure points. And as that becomes more of an instinct and you play more games and you start to call out certain reflections, we find that that can be a really effective way to say, oh, I know what we need to do in this moment. And you don't have to like take 5 hours to think about, all right, this is going to be the perfect game, right? You can sort of take a game that you know and you can repackage it for the purpose that you need. So that's a lot of what we've learned as how to make games and play more effective. I'll pause there. I know we're kind of getting to the top of the hour. I want to share some links if people are interested in resources. Happy to share kind of different play-based things. But I'll give you a couple minutes as I copy things into the chat. Any questions? Things that are particular to your current circumstance?
I guess I'm curious. How do you position this, or like, do you have to position kind of the game-based approach differently depending on who you're talking to? And I'm asking because I'm getting into consulting to make game-based training as well, actually, and figuring out like, is it game first, as in like it's really about the fun and the engagement and why this method, or is it still really like hardcore your business problems? Oh, we just do it in a fun way. Like, have you found that sweet spot of like selling, especially like the budget holders, about why your approach is better than talking at them through slides?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like the $1 million question in the space right now. The answer I'll give you is it depends, but I would say more often than not, lead with the business outcome. People are going to engage you to start because they need help with something that they are experiencing right now. And you know that games and play can be sort of your secret weapon in getting people to get to the outcome, right? So you can be fun in delivering the idea, right? Or you can be energetic, or you can use games and play. When you lead with play, you more or less need to have a culture that is already playful in order for them to resonate. So if you go in and people are laughing, having a good time, and you say, hey, we're going to play some games and we're going to get to this thing, they're going to be like, great, that's fabulous. Like, we're in. But if people are more kind of businessy, we got deadlines, got something coming up. I don't want to be here for 2 hours. And you say, well, this is going to help you toward that. They're going to lean in. And then they're going to be like, wow, I really needed this. And when games go well, oftentimes they'll want to do it again, as long as it's kind of in that intentional frame. The link I shared in the chat. So we've built a platform database. It's free to sign up if you're open to it. I can share more resources on the back end. But it's basically we've created a repository of links, catalogs, game databases. And what I want to show you right now is just kind of as we hit the top of the hour, is kind of the inside of what this app looks like, so you know what you're signing up for. We are not tech people. We are people that build resources. I was a designer in school, so I was thinking about how to kind of create a language. But inside of this, what I want to point you to is that we've started cataloging games that you might be familiar with. So at the top of your page, when you sign in, you'll find that there's a game database. And in this database, we've cataloged current to date about 119 games, right? Those could be activities like fortunately, unfortunately, that could be visionary like we played today. It could be any of the games that you listed at the top of this session. And we've gone through and we've cataloged them by all of their different mechanics, dynamics, questions, reflection ideas, ways that you might be able to take this into a learning outcome. Again, to give you a way of finding games that feel like they fit the moment. So as I share the screen, I'll say that there's a filter button here in the upper right. You can go and you can filter by any kind of thing. Are my players gamers? Yes, no, right? How long do I have? How many people are in the group? Do I want to focus on a particular thing like creativity, right? Do I want to lean into the fact that I am in a digital space? Do I have something at the beginning of my session or at the end of my session that I need to kind of like fill in? And then you can hit this filter button and see what pops up. Oh, okay, there's still a lot of games. There are 54 games left. All right, I know Apples to Apples. It's kind of a classic tabletop game. How can I use that game? I can pop in to how we've cataloged this game. So it's everything from here are all the mechanics that you might use. Here are all the dynamics that you might try to pull out as reflections. And then as you go down, there are the how to plays and kind of how it fits in different sessions, different questions that you might want to ask. So this is the resource that we're trying to build to give people that instinct for what games you can use. So I'm always really curious to see what resonates with people, how you want to use it, but I'm here to answer questions and just share what I can with bringing games in, because I know the more people experience good intentional game learning, the more they're going to want of this. Joanna, I see your comment. I'm reading through it now. Yeah, thanks, Joanna. Any other thoughts, comments, kind of what you took away from today? I'm happy to stay. I've got another kind of half an hour if people want to chat or share their thoughts, or if you've got a particular project. But I also know that a lot of you are at the end of your days. And so, happy to go get dinner.
I was just going to add, Peter, that when I've sort of done stuff, like you said, like the culture is very, very key. But sometimes when you're like coming together on a project and you're trying to sort of figure out where you're going with it, some of this stuff can be really, really helpful for teams. So a couple that I quite like, well, I'll give some examples. When we were trying to sort of figure out what our company's intranet was actually going to be and how we wanted it to work, and we were building community around it and engagement. The IT department and myself actually got a whole bunch of stakeholders together, and we ran a workshop, but it was an entirely game-based workshop. That couple of activities. One was, draw the newspaper headline where we've been successful in a year's time for when this thing's actually launched. How is it being, celebrated or advertised? And then one of my favorite ones is the sailboat one. So what's all the things that are holding you back, your anchors, and how deep are they? And what's the things that are actually making your sails blow? And it's, you're getting them to like throw out ideas, then understand it. And then you can then transition that into, okay, what do we need to do to start removing some of those anchors? Or how can we focus on some of the positives as well? So if you've got the right environment, you can really do something with it that can also not just be for training, but it can also like be facilitated for outcomes of projects, is basically what I'm saying. It's good fun.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. there's so many games that you can use. And I think that's what we've learned in this is we started kind of going down the approach of like, oh, do we want to create our own simulations based on what we've learned that are really targeted to particular learning outcomes? And we learned we can be just as effective using apples to apples in a build a tower challenge than we can with a custom simulation. So like, why spend that effort, right? There are things that are already out there. And I think that also feels more accessible, right? You don't have to learn the game, take 20 hours to learn a simulation exercise. You can just play a game you know. And that I think has helped a lot of people lean into this more.
I also wanted to
Yeah, it's
add.
interesting.
Oh, go
Please
ahead,
go ahead.
Anna.
Yeah, I was just thinking I went to a game industry convention recently, so I was like the lone L&D person in like a sea of really like game people, and it was kind of interesting, having a session like this, which is of course really from the learning side. But yeah, kind of one reflection from that world, actually tying to the last comment, was, as I was talking about what I was building and creating in the games I'm working on, a lot of like the game designers and developers are thinking, yeah, how do we make, like a simulation out of this? How to make it scale? How do we build it into a digital format that people can do? And I was like, I'm talking paper prototypes. I'm talking, yeah, like simple things, but it kind of makes me think about the breadth of kind of simplicity versus complexity. Like, yeah, you can have, development studios that could make a really, really cool simulation or a VR training or a branching story based really game, or you can play with Legos. And maybe you can solve some similar projects, and there's probably space for both. But yeah, kind of like that point that you don't actually need to be only looking at game design or gamified learning as this huge thing. You can actually already incorporate super simple techniques in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Jordan?
He had to drop. So, and as do I as well, Peter. But thank you so much for that. That was absolutely fantastic. And really enjoyed it. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan. Jordan, did you have a comment? Oh, I need to head out. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
I have to. Excellent. Well, thank you for everyone for sticking around and playing, and hope to see you at another play session at some time in the future. So everyone have a good day, evening, wherever you are in your 24-hour cycle.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for sharing this resource on your website. I'm going to be, using that immediately. It looks really good. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Sure. Jordan's gone. Julie, I'm not sure, but thanks, Andrea.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this session. And I'll post the recording on YouTube, and I encourage everyone to give feedback via Luma. Thank you.
Thank you for setting it up.
Thank you.
Great
session.
We'll see you soon.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.